It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. Well, today we're going to be having a look at the Akko 3061 Tokyo mechanical keyboard. Now, this mechanical keyboard has been provided to me courtesy of Banggood and the Banggood summer sale. Now, of course, as per usual, all of the opinions that I have about this video are entirely mine, but you can get this keyboard from Banggood as part of their summer sale, which will be starting on the 7th of July. So do go check it out. The link to the summer sale and other deals will be in the description below. And of course, let's have a look at this actual keyboard and the listing. It is actually in a sealed package, so I haven't opened it yet and checked it out, but we'll see what it says in the listing, what we can expect, and then we'll have a look at this keyboard and see if it matches to the expectations. So the keyboard is this, the Akko 3061 Tokyo R2. I'm guessing it's the round 2 mechanical keyboard. It's 61 switches, 60% form factor. As you can see, the switches are pre-lubed in the description there. It's meant to be RGB. PBT keycaps with this Tokyo Japanese theme. Now, there are some switch options here: orange switch, pink switch, yellow switch. I actually can't remember what switch is in the keyboard that I've got, but we'll discover that very shortly. And you can see the current price is 70 US pretty much, but have a look in the description below because they often provide me a code that will give you a bit of a discount. So this is a really interesting keycap set because I've got the precursor to this, and you can check that review out of the Akko World Tour Tokyo set from a really long time ago, and it has the same thematics to it with the Mount Fuji spacebar and the fish, and some of these novelties are the same as well. But what's really nice on this new version is the fact that it's also got the hiragana underneath, and interestingly enough, I don't know why there's duplication of the hiragana up the top here on that. I mean, you've got and u, e, o, ya, you, yo, and then you've got wa and wa down there. Okay, so it does look like there's some changes, but most of that's actually duplicated. No, don't really know, but that's okay. So there's a couple of reviews from some other people. We'll see if my video will end up there eventually. What have we got? We have a USB Type-C connection. It's RGB. It's about 500 grams. N-key rollover, which is really great. You can use the Akko Marco V1. Maybe that means macro, but they just got their letters around the wrong way. Dust cover. That'll be cool. Keycap puller. It'll probably be one of those plastic things. Some nice pretty glamour shots with a very pink background. Okay, so we got some hotkeys and some functions which we might refer to later, as well as being able to test out the RGB. Now, you know that I'm not a massive RGB person or a massive RGB fan, but you know, we'll run through the basics on what it actually provides. And there doesn't really seem to be any information here about the Akko macro software, if anything, on how you actually build those macros. So maybe it's on the Akko website, but we're not going to go into that level of detail today, just checking out this keyboard. So it's pretty straightforward. Let's have a look. Let's do some typing on it and see what it sounds like. Hang on, let's just see if the text actually tells us anything about this macro. No. This keyboard supports full key macro programming and you can set up game combos. Well, where? How? Not detailed on this product listing. So let's switch back down below. So there's the packet, just pretty bog standard plastic. I don't want to show you on that side fully because it's got my address label, but let's cut this open and extradite it from its very, very thin plastic home. Oh, got a second layer of protective plastic, which is nice. Okay, so that's been taped, but that's where it lives. All right. Be part of the journey, Tokyo World Tour. I've always thought about this because they talk about Tokyo World Tour, but I haven't seen any other keycaps of other places. There's no Sydney World Tour. There's no New York World Tour. There's no Paris World Tour. Do they exist? If so, I've never seen them or heard of them. It would be cool if there were other sets to thematically match other locations on a world tour. So this is pretty much the same detail that we just saw on the website. The box, I think that's meant to be the upside down, the back of the box. This is meant to be the front of the box. And then, of course, the Akko gear then matches correctly. Now, what do we got? We got Gateron Orange switches there. Gateron Orange and RGB, just some QR codes, some serial number related things, and just an SKU on the side there. So, the slide out box. I always like their packaging. I find the box quality to be quite nice, and the presentation with that is always quite nice. Right, fresh box, doesn't look like it's ever been opened before. Is always good, so it's not some kind of dodgy return. And here we go. So we've got a dust cover as promised, and it's a blow molded, but it's got the Akko on it. It should fit pretty much a standard 60%. So if you don't actually use this yourself and you've got somebody else who might be after a 60% dust cover, you could always pass it on to them. There's the actual keyboard. I'm going to say there's the compartment that's going to have the rest of the cable and probably the keycap puller and the detachable cable. So let's free them. Oh, something just fell out. Ooh, fancy. That's actually quite a nice keycap puller. Definitely not one of those horrible plastic ring pullers. And we have a very pink USB-C that has some protectors on that, which is nice to see. There's your USB-C, and then of course there's the USB-A with a pink Akko Velcro keeping it together, which is really quite nice. It was just a bit of punch-out cardboard from the holes. Not quite sure why they need to punch the holes there. Maybe it's so that they can quality check that the cable is actually in there. Right, we have a manual, and that's it, and a quality control ticket. Looks like it probably says something to do with the fact that somebody's QC'd it. Let's remove it from this PE foam. And there you have it. There is first look, first impressions of this keyboard. Tokyo Metro. Very nice. We've got some a katana and a wakizashi there. There's some koi fish, a Shibu Inu, the Sakura Neko, an owl. Don't really know why the owl is a Japanese motif. Should it be one? Is it one? I don't actually fully know. What is going on? Is that pressing on my arrow key? It was bumping my mouse button all the way down. Now let's just drag this back up to the top and have a look. So it is meant to be wide. It does actually have a lot of weight to it, and the reason why I was just checking is wasn't expecting it to have a battery or anything in it. The back of it, the case, is actually really angled. Have a look at that. So unlike, say, a lot of the cheaper 60% cases, they tend to have that as just a solid angle on it. So some of the really cheap Taobao cases tend to have that. So having this styling and that lift is actually a quite nice touch. The fact that they've actually got all pink rubber feet as well to match, so it's not black ones, is also a nice touch. And the fact that you've actually got 2 steps of leg flip out is actually really interesting because the angle's already quite high. So we'll test that out in a moment, but that's adding a lot of extra angle on top. Wow. So, quick look at the manual before we just put that back in, since we're probably not going to look at it too much. Got some English. It's pretty much the same thing over and over in a couple of different languages and what the website already detailed. Here we go. Macro setup instruction. So it's hardware-based, works without software. So you can't program escape function and window keys. You can hold window function to switch to macro mode. When it's reconnected, the macro mode will be exited. You need to switch to the macro mode again to use the program keys. So does not support simultaneous trigger. AB will trigger the two keys in order of A plus B. Okay, so it won't do combination keys. And it doesn't support custom interval time. Right, so there's a whole process going on here where you start the macro editor, function custom key, macro recording, function custom key. Exit macro editor, exit macro mode. Wow, that seems, it seems pretty straightforward. Okay, so they actually run you through an example of using this to type in Akko gear. So you can actually set that up to do function A to record the key presses, and then if you hit A, it'll dump it out. So you actually kind of have to jump in and out of the macro function to get in to dump out a macro. So it's not really like a replacement key, but I guess it is a way of doing it. And the fact that you can actually do it without software, I think is pretty cool. Probably limited use for some people, but that's going to be an individual use case. I'm not going to go exploring to that because generally, for most part, that level of extra software review is a little bit further out of what I like to review, which is the straight up the hardware. Okay, so here's the keyboard. It's got a good weight. I don't have the scales out. My wife's making some dumplings at the moment, and I don't want to grab the scales for that to get in the way and dusty and floury and have mince and mushroom and garlic all over this keyboard. So I'm just going to give it a mild flex, and this is actually quite rigid. I can get a bit of flex, but I'm actually putting a lot of pressure on that. So I'm going to set that flat. It's very firm. There's no flex at all. So if I try and twist it and then put it back down again, there's no wobble. Good stuff. Really happy with that. Okay, this is the natural angle. It's quite comfortable. Quite comfortable. If I go up one tick, it's still okay. Probably want to start floating my hands now with that small increase. It's all right, but it's a little bit higher than what I'm used to. And then if I go all the way up, wow, that is really not nice at all. And that just seems weird. Now, to put that into perspective, a normal keyboard is not going to lift that high. So the back of the keyboard now, on the highest point, it's 45 millimeters off the ground to the case. Okay, now if we go to the top of the row 1 keys, you're almost pushing 55 millimeters. That's 2 and a bit inches, like maybe 2 1/4 inch. That's really high. Now, if you're using a wrist rest, that'll probably help compensate for that. But personal preference, I don't think it really needs that. Even the first step is really not super necessary. If you had a wrist rest, it's actually an okay comfort factor. Like I use a wrist rest at work, and height-wise, it's only like maybe 2 centimeters, 2 and a bit centimeters, and it does elevate because my work keyboard, being a custom keyboard, is 35 millimeters high at the front. This would work okay with that on that first step. But to be honest, I think the default angle on this is actually quite comfortable. Okay. Well, keycaps are pretty much as expected. Let's break out their... It's nice that they've got that hole in the middle for the finger to go through, and it's short and stubby. Wires have a good thickness to them. Let's just take some keycaps off. Check it out. And okay, so these are what appear to be die sub, and you can see the fuzziness of that die sub. It's not super crisp, but at the same time, it's not too bad. I mean, there's a bit of bleed on that, but I'd say it's okay. I'd say it's tolerable. You can do worse. And from a distance, like, you know, at tabletop distance, which of course I've just pulled the focus away too fast, too hard. Hello? Hey. Focus, focus, focus. There we go. So at that distance, as you can see from the camera, you can't really notice that bleed. It's only when you get really close that you can see that fuzziness of the bleed. And because it is a PBT material, that rougher texture is going to cause some of those problems. I don't have a problem with the quality of that Legends. You're just not going to be looking up that close. Now, thickness. Okay, so the front leading edge of that is just on 1 mil. The side is just on 1 mil. The back is just on 1 mil. And the other side is just on 1 mil. So 1 mil, they're not 1.5 thick. You can see some kind of, you know, sprue markings and removals on the back edge of that. It's okay, it's on the other side, it's not too shabby. But what's really interesting is that there is pink-ish residue on the inside of that stem, and I think it's coming from the switch stem, because this one's got it too. So that's really, really interesting. Now this is not hot swap, so I'm not going to try and pull them out. And this is meant to be a orange switch, right? The box said it was orange. Where the box said it was. It says Gateron Orange. They don't look orange to me. I mean, they probably are orange, but color-wise, it just looks more like a pink to me. So let's have a look. Oh, well, you know, in the brighter light, they do look orange. Orange switches are... I want to say they're tactile. I think they're tactile, but they're just a really weak tactile if they are. There is like a little bit of a bump to them. But if they're not meant to be, and they're meant to be a linear, then they're a very weird linear. If it's a 2-stage, I honestly couldn't tell you. I haven't actually gone and looked up what a Gateron Orange switch is, but maybe we can do that in a moment. So I'm going to put these back on. Let's have a look at the stabilizers, because stabilizers are really important here. What have we got? Are they plate mount? They are plate mount, as expected. So there you go. So there is some plate mount. You can see the factory lube. It's quite generous. There's a very big glob of it there. So that's kind of be expected there. Thickness, it looks okay. These actually look a bit thicker on the back. No, they're still kicking around 1 and a bit mil. That's all right. Let's spam some stabilized keys. Yeah, that's not bad. Pretty smooth. I think the factory lube on them is all right. Okay, so let's plug it in with this very pink cable. In fact, my daughter would absolutely love this, and if you've got someone in your family who loves pink, then this keyboard is possibly going to make their day. All right. The cable's actually really nice and thick too. So that's really good. And look at that. That fitment into that socket is actually pretty good. And I've got that cable upside down because it's designed to meet the actual contour. I think that's a really nice touch. I haven't actually seen any OEM boards that do that. Okay, so there's the RGB on default. Let's turn off the room light. And let's turn off the overhead light. And you can see a very slow breathing mode of RGB. Right, so let's change the lighting effects. RGB hotkeys. Interesting. Where is the modes? Okay. Right, so it should be function enter is, okay, so we're on a constant light mode. That's just slowly evolving. We're in a breathing mode. We've got a sort of, let me get Notepad out so I'm not going to accidentally dump some code into somewhere. All right, so it's just still some kind of breathing mode. We've got a wave pattern, scrolling pattern, rain kind of trickle pattern. Well, it's actually a circling pulse pattern, and off. Oh, so it's kind of like a raindrop type of situation that lights up as you touch type. Sorry. We've got the row explosion. We've got multicolored effects. That seems to change when you type. Maybe a little bit. Bit of scattering. Vertical cascading. Your typical sine wave pulse. Exploding modes. Actual raindrops. Whatever that's called. And then I think we're kind of back to the start. Yeah, okay. So that's cool. We can change the color with our backspace. Actually, let's get to a mode. There we go. Green, blue, purple, pink, multicolor, red, orange, yellow, back to green. We can dim it, and there's dimming, and then, whoa, that maximum brightness? That must be the maximum brightness. Okay. And then of course we can speed up and slow down the animations. So that will be faster. That's the fastest of that. And we can slow it right. That's the slowest. Okay, so it's fairly straightforward. There's nothing, I would say, crazy about the number of modes that's being offered here. But at the same time, I think it's probably sufficient for most people who just want some basic light effects going on. Okay. Right, let's go and do some typing. So I'm going to drop the microphone down now and try and give you a bit of a typing situation as it sounds on these Gateron Oranges. Okay. Just got to make sure I'm on the right window. Rightio. Hopefully that kind of gave you an idea of what it sounds like, and to be honest, I actually really like it. I think the depth of the sound that is actually coming off that keyboard is actually quite nice. It's better than I was anticipating it to sound, and it doesn't sound as plastic as it could have been. Whatever they've got in here as far as a plate material goes is definitely helping with that, because trying to make the keyboard flex earlier under the flex test and it not moving tells me that the thickness, because you can see it's actually quite thick, and the shape of this case is very, very strong, and the material of that plate, which to be honest is probably metal for it to be that heavy. I'm just going to take off a couple of keycaps here and just, you know, tap it with something. Here we go. Yeah, so it looks like it's powder coated metal is probably what's contributing to that good sound that I'm hearing out of it. Now, that's also because I type in bottom out quite reasonably. Like, I'm not a super heavy typer, but it's giving me a good amount of echo underneath. If that kind of sound really interests you, then, well, this board is certainly very affordable for what it is if you like and you're after a 60% form factor. You know what? Now, because I've actually got this and, you know, I'm curious, I want to actually take this apart to have a look underneath what's going on. So typically there'll be a number of screws, and it is going to be a bottom mount board. Just trying to find where the other screws are without taking everything off. There's typically one hanging around over here somewhere. There you go. There's another one there. Generally, that might be it. I actually haven't been this curious to open up an OEM board for review for a really long time, because most of them, their internals aren't really that interesting or that exciting. But this one has actually got me curious enough to do this. So, you know, if this video is already too long for you and you've already skipped around, that's okay. It's cool. I know. I talk a lot, and I also go into a lot more of my opinions and thoughts than other reviewers, but that's all right. Thank you very much for coming if you want to bail at this point in time, or of course you've just clicked through and you're discovering that I'm still trying to take this thing apart. Don't mind at all. Thank you for coming along. And if you're still here on this journey and checking out this keyboard with me, then thank you very much for hanging around. Okay, so let's see if these are all the screws that I found, and then we can pop this out and actually have a look at it from the inside, because this keyboard is actually growing a bit more and more on me the more that I have a look at it. Wasn't expecting it to be actually this nice, to be honest. Thought it was going to be pretty ordinary, but yeah, there we go. So it only held 5 screws. Wow, that is a lot of weight. Okay, so yeah, so it's definitely metal, and you can tell it's metal because the plate's metal, because they've got this here. So what this is a bit of metal on the plate that they've gone through and they've physically twisted it. They've twisted it to hold it in place. So if you're trying to remove the PCB from this, you're actually going to have a hard time, because you need to bend that back to fit between the slots. It's designed in a way that it's not actually easy necessarily for you to be able to angle to pull that out. I'm not sure if you could you. You'd have to move the PCB that way, and that won't let you. Yeah, so you actually would have to physically get some pliers and crank that metal on the plate to be able to take the PCB off. So you can see all the RGBs on there that are on the underside and are shining through, obviously, the holes in the PCB. There's big fat capacitor there. There's a USB-C connector. I can't actually see the chip with my naked eye, but let's see if I can read anything on that chip under the light. Okay, so the chip says VS11K09A 208CNWACE. So I have absolutely no idea what that chip is, but that might be simply a some kind of control chip for even the RGBs, although that's probably the small one maybe. I'm not that clued up on these kinds of things, but it's certainly not a standard 32U4 type processor. It's very neat. It's very well done. There's a little bit of a blemish over here. Not quite sure. That looks like some sticky residue. Might have been a sticker or something like that that came off it. Yeah, you can feel it. It's sticky there. But otherwise, that's the underside. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So what I've just spotted there is the wall's broken off. So there's the actual wall. Look, it's gone. It's actually been broken off. It's not that it wasn't even injected, it's actually been sheared off. And I know why. Because that capacitor hits that wall. If you look at where that fat capacitor lives, it is right on top of that wall line. So the easy solution is, of course, to, rather than redesign your mold for this case bottom, is to just cut that wall off. Look, it's actually quite smart to do that, and it's quite cost effective because it's cheaper than designing a brand new mold and having more units produced specifically to counter that. You just give your assembly line people a pair of pliers and they can just go clip, clip, bend it and snap it off, and then you're golden. So, but it is funny to actually discover that, and you wouldn't have seen it if you don't take this apart. And if you don't think about what the components are doing, then, you know, as a consumer, you might get upset and say, they've given me a defective case. But in reality, there's a reason why, as good or bad as it is. So there you go. I'm going to wrap it up there, put this back together, get those keycaps back on. But while I actually put those screws on and I've got those keycaps off, I might as well plug it back in and you can enjoy some bright lights. But what are my final thoughts on this? So I came in with this thinking it was just going to be another pretty bog standard 60% with some pretty keycaps on it. Now, while that is mostly true, I think this is probably a little bit better and nicer than some other 60% OEM keyboards that I've seen over the years. Look, it's not wireless or Bluetooth, and it certainly can't be compared to boards like those, like the AN Pro 2, for example, or, you know, any of those others that have those features, because they're a completely different category. But for a lot of the generic clones that are USB-C that have RGB on it, I think this is definitely one of the nicer ones that I've come across, because a lot of those, they make sacrifices for what you get. this plate is really, really rigid. It's really strong. It's quite firm. I like that. This keyboard overall has a lot of weight to it, and that helps with the feel, and I think it's also helped with the depth of the sound that I am experiencing out of it. Keycaps are pretty good quality for what they are, and thematically with the pink as well, they're working. They come together and hold it quite nice. Though, you know, if you're going to take these keycaps off and put something else on it, you're going to have to make sure it matches the pinkness of this and the cable. I think it's a really nice touch, actually, that the cable is designed specifically to match the contour lines of the case. So, you know, I'm very pleased with this board. Now, would I use this board at work? No. Not because it's not a nice keyboard, it would just have a lot of my colleagues looking at me like there was something that has occurred to me during COVID lockdown. Would I use this keyboard at home? If I was after 60% and I needed that extra space for whatever it is that I'm doing, yeah, I would use it. Feels good. The switches I quite like. They are still something that I don't know about, so let's just do a quick Gateron. It's hard to type when half the keycaps are missing and no space bar. Orange. Gateron Orange switch. Okay, Gateron Orange switch is Gateron made orange switches. Just having a quick look, and I don't think that was very helpful. Gateron Orange switch lubed from the actual Akko website. It is tactile, so it's tactile, 45 grams. What can I say? They're very, very, very light bump. Very, very, very light bump. Rightio. I think that is it. I don't think there's much else to say. I'm going to say this is probably a 7.5 pushing 8. Reasonable value for the cost at $70 US. You know, that's going to be close to $100 Australian for $100 as an entry level 60% keyboard that you can have a lot of fun with and really enjoy. This definitely gets a really good rating from me. So thank you very much for coming along and checking out this video. You know the drill. If you like this kind of stuff and you want to see me check out more keyboards and talk about my thoughts on them, then of course please hit that like button. If you want to see more videos on keyboard stuff, then of course hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get notifications on when my new videos come out, then of course hit that bell notification button. Feedback and comments below. Check out the links for both the sale as well as this keyboard and any of the discount codes that might be available from Banggood. And yeah, make sure that you guys look after yourselves, look after each other, especially in some of these very, very trying times. So with that, as I just finish up putting these last two keycaps in, thanks for checking out this video, and of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.